Hi everybody, it's Doug Keating. Welcome to my 8th practice video. In this video, I'm going to describe the awesome vacation we took in the summer of 2017 to France, the Keating and the Singers' first joint venture together over in Europe. You may recall in the last video that I described the detailed plan we would follow. What I plan to do in this video is share what actually happened, the results. I'm going to use a lot of pictures and even a little bit of humor to talk about our adventure. Vive la France! On this chart, you see the route we plan to follow. We'd start in Paris and then drive in a counterclockwise manner through Normandy and a little bit of Brittany. We would visit the towns of Giverny, Rouen, Honfleur, Caen, Bayeux, the D-Day beaches, Mont Saint-Michel, Rennes, and then loop back to Paris. You know, I am trying my best, but I just cannot speak these French towns correctly. Pardon. After an overnight flight, we landed in Paris for day one. Our hotel was near the Eiffel Tower, so we figured we would start our adventure there. On the left, you see a picture of Riley with his really cool sunglasses and a French baguette, because nothing says France more than a baguette, with the iconic Eiffel Tower in the background. On the right, that evening, we went up to the Sacré-Cœur, which is a famous church that overlooks the city. Great views. If you look, Riley is kind of tired in this photo, and that's because day one can be a challenge. Not a lot of sleep on the plane, but it's important that you grind it out and stay up as long as you can on day one. The next morning, we decided to see the sights. No better place to start than in the historic center of Paris. And nothing symbolizes that better than the iconic Notre Dame church. On the left, you see Riley and me standing in front of the church. You can also see the line forming behind us. When visiting the Notre Dame, there is always a line. Anybody that goes to Paris is going to stop at this site. Just get there early and deal with it as best you can. On the right is one of my favorite photos from the entire trip. It's myself and Jill standing on a bridge over the Seine with the Notre Dame in the background. In case you can't tell in both photos, we actually had really great sunny weather. In fact, it was a little bit hot, and I'm going to talk about the challenge that comes with hot weather in Europe in a few slides. Another site worth visiting in the historic center is the Sainte-Chapelle Cathedral. Actually, it's a chapel, not a cathedral. The reason to go is the stained glass. It's wonderful, especially on a really sunny day, and that's what we had. On the left, you see Riley standing in the Sainte-Chapelle with some of the stained glass in the background. We also were able to do a little shopping on day two. On the right, you see Riley standing in front of the Supreme store in Paris. Very hip, very cool. Not many teenagers can claim they've been to the Supreme store in Paris, France. Way to go, Riley Keating. Next up was art. Paris is famous for it, and there's no better place to see a lot of it. And when I say a lot of it, I mean a ton of it in the Louvre. If you're not careful, you can spend all day and kind of get lost in the world of art. On the left, you see Jake, Riley, and Jordan getting ready to scale the stairs to one of the wings of the Louvre. And on the right, yep, that's yours truly standing with, oh, there she is, the Mona Lisa in the background. Two things to notice about the Mona Lisa. First, in case you can't tell from the picture, the painting's actually not that big. It's kind of small. A lot of people don't know that, and it's always packed when you're going to see her. So just make sure that you take your time so you can get close enough to actually enjoy the view. And two, yep, they keep her behind special glass. Keep her away from the hordes of tourists who are all taking selfies, like myself. They don't want to ruin the painting. If you look behind me, you see the wooden rail. That's about as close as you can get without sounding the alarm. So what I recommend doing is show up, wade your way through the crowd, and then get your photo with her in the background. Day 3, we continued to see some art, and we also did a little shopping. Upper left-hand corner, you see Riley at l'Orangerie. This is a special museum for some very large Monet paintings. Word to the wise, they don't like for you to talk in this museum. You have to whisper. They get mad if you're talking loud. That's a picture of Riley standing in front of one of the Monets. Lower left, that is me in the Orsay. The Orsay is definitely worth a stop. The main reason being the largest Impressionist collection in all of Paris is housed in the Orsay. It's also a pretty cool building. Upper right, that's a group photo. All of us standing in La Concorde with the Eiffel Tower in the background. And lower right, yes, the ladies did get to do a little shopping. No better place to go than Louis Vuitton store. Their flagship store is here, and you get special treatment. As you walk through the store, someone accompanies you all the way. just to make sure you're comfortable and just in case you need any help spending all that money on Louis Vuitton. We were able to spend some time on the most famous boulevard or avenue in all of Paris, Champs-Élysées. On the left, you see Riley standing in front or below one of the famous signs. He has in his hand a bag. The boys did good to do a little shopping. In this case, Riley was able to secure a PSG jersey, something he'd wanted for a long time. And on the right, you see Riley standing with the Arc de Triomphe in the background. The Arc sits at the end of the Champs-Élysées. It has a crazy traffic loop that flies around it. We did not actually get to see the Arc. Two reasons. One, the line was really long to get in. And two, a terrorist incident occurred while we were there. A few thoughts if a terrorist incident occurs while you're traveling. First and foremost, make sure you think about safety. If something happens, quickly identify what am I going to do, where am I going to go to be safe. Oddly enough, Louis Vuitton probably would have been our best choice in case we had to go hide. Second, I was really impressed with the French response. A lot of cars, a lot of police, a lot of guns flying down the Champs-Élysées to deal with the situation. They definitely take counterterrorism serious in this part of the world. And third, don't let this crap ruin a good vacation. The knuckleheads that do these kind of things, they're trying to stop your life. Don't let them do it. Just kind of deal with it and move on. Paris is also famous for food, so a few thoughts about dining in Paris. Upper left-hand corner, you see Riley eating dinner in the Montmartre area up near the Sacré-Cœur. If he looks tired in the photo, it's because he is. This is dinner day one, and man, you get tired by dinner time. Lower left corner, cafe. I highly recommend eating in cafes in Paris. Good service, yummy food, and you don't spend too much money. There's a lot of fine restaurants in Paris. My recommendation, you can spend a lot of money and you probably won't necessarily enjoy it better than cafes. I would just stick to the cafes. Upper right corner, that is Jake and Riley getting ready to order as we ate on the Champs-Élysées. It cost a little more to eat on the Champs-Élysées, but I thought it was worth it for the experience and the views. And lower right is Riley and myself at one of the cafes in our neighborhood. We spent a lot of time at cafes, drinking coffee, eating meals, catching up, and just having a good time. But I need to confess, if there's one meal that I enjoy more than any other in Paris, it is le petit déjeuner. That is breakfast. Butter croissant, café au lait, OJ. Excellent. Does not get much better than this. Great way to start the day. Next on our agenda was visiting the Ile-de-France, or area around Paris. In this case, visiting the Versailles Palace, Louis XIV's masterpiece. Few photos from there. Upper left is Jake, Jordan, Riley, and Jill standing in the Hall of Mirrors, which is probably the most impressive room in the entire palace. Lower left is Jake, Jordan, and Riley in the gardens. I forgot how big the gardens are. They are ginormous. They actually hosted a running race while we were there, and we walked all over the gardens and never got even close to even where the race was. On the right, you see Jill and Jordan inside the palace itself, near one of the large fireplaces. After a few days in Paris, we were over our jet lag, and it was time to begin our trek into Normandy. First stop, Giverny, which is known for one thing and one thing only, and that is Claude Monet. The reason I say that is Giverny is tiny, I mean really small village. Few photos from our stop, upper left-hand corner. That's a picture of Monet himself inside the house that he lived in while he painted there. Lower left is Riley in one of the gardens. And on the right is Riley crossing one of the famous bridges that shows up in several Monet paintings. One big thing to think about when visiting Giverny, it's helpful to get there early. We got there a little later than I'd hoped. Getting the rental car was a little bit more of an adventure than expected. Once we got there, it is packed with tourists. A lot of people will day trip from Paris. It's only about an hour away, so you can picture tons of buses in a parking lot, everybody unloading and going into the gardens. Hard to get quality photos with everybody wandering around, but it is definitely worth the stop. A few more photos from our visit to Giverny. On the left, you see Jake, Jill, and Riley in the upper garden. There's actually multiple gardens at the location. In this case, this one has flowers, not the water and the lily pads like the one on the previous chart. And on the right is beautiful Jill in the center of the gardens. A question worth asking, is Giverny worth it? I actually think it is. I'm not a huge fan of Impressionist painting. It's nice, nice colors, beautiful pictures, but I have to admit, it's definitely worth going. As mentioned, get there early so that you don't get stuck with all the other hordes of tourists wandering the site. And two, I wouldn't spend too much time there. Just a few hours, get a feel for the place, take some nice pictures, then jump back in the car and keep going. Next stop, the lovely little town of Rouen. It's about an hour north from Giverny. On the left, you see Riley standing on the main drag. Yes, he is wearing his PSG jersey. And on the right is a photo of the cathedral. We were able to climb the bell tower or clock tower to get this photo, and I'm really glad we did. It's hard to snap a good shot when you are really close to the cathedral, but from this perspective, you get a sense of just how big it is when compared to the town. Two more photos from our stop in Rouen. On the left, you see several half-timbered towers. They've been lovingly restored, a fun section of the city to walk through. And on the right is a statue of Joan of Arc. Rouen is famous as related to Joan of Arc because this is where she was tried, found guilty, and murdered. They have a special church erected in her honor, and then this statue actually marks the place that she was burned alive. Next stop was the picturesque old harbor town of Honfleur. A few photos on this chart, upper left-hand corner. This is a photo actually taken from right in front of our hotel, pointing back at the old harbor. And then the other three I took the next morning. I was able to walk around without a whole lot of folks, a nice sunrise, to get a sense of how beautiful this old harbor is. Several painters have come here to paint the old harbor, and having visited, I can see why they did. It is a beautiful location. Two more pictures from our visit to Honfleur. On the left is Jill, Jordan, Jake, and Riley. We're at dinner. You'll notice on the table a bottle of cider. Cider is famous throughout this region as kind of the drink of choice. In the background, you see a church. The important difference with this church is that it's made of wood, not of stone. This area includes a lot of shipbuilders. So if you look on the right, there's a picture of Riley sitting inside the church. It is completely made of wood. I don't remember seeing really any stone in the building at all. Rick Steves like to say, if you flip this church upside down, it would float. I agree with them. Let's talk a little bit more about French food, and in this case, some of the food from the region. On the left is a seafood appetizer that I ordered in Honfleur. I'm still not even sure what all of them were as far as the creatures from the sea, but it was tasty. On the right, French onion soup from this region. A little bit different than French onion soup in other parts of France. First, it's not as dark, and two, they don't smother it with cheese. Nonetheless, it is very tasty. Next morning we woke up and we decided that we would drive part of the coast. Somewhat unplanned and impromptu, but definitely well worth it. Two reasons. One, it was hot. And when I say hot, I mean like hot. This area unseasonably warm. We did not have air conditioning in our hotel, and I definitely heard about that in the morning. Second is it's just a beautiful drive. Coastline, beach towns, well worth it. Few photos from here. You can see that we walked the boardwalk. We're able to walk the sand, put our toes in the chilly English Channel, cool down a bit. If you're in this area, I definitely recommend driving part of the coastline. It's beautiful and you will enjoy it. Next stop was Cannes, more specifically the D-Day Museum. Because the weather was so hot, I thought it might be a smart move to skip the town and just go straight to the museum. Good decision. Few photos from our visit. Upper left-hand corner is Riley near the entrance with a P-38 Spitfire behind him. That's an actual plane. Upper right-hand corner, some of the timeline from the D-Day invasion. Lower right-hand corner, a Jeep from World War II, a vehicle made famous for its versatility during the war. And lower left corner, group photo. That's Jake, Jill, Jordan, and Riley. Hey, they're probably looking a little bit tired, a little bit hot. We'd walk through the museum waiting for the movie to start. Time to take a break. We finished this day by arriving in Bayeux, the small city that we would use to launch to see the D-Day beaches. A few photos from that visit. Upper left-hand corner, Riley and Jordan at dinner, having a little fun. Oh my God, you're so stupid during dinner. Upper right-hand corner, that's Riley standing in front of an old mill. It was actually a fully functioning mill. Lower right-hand corner, the city had several half-timbered houses. That's just a good example. And lower left corner is a selfie with the cathedral in the background. Took a little bit of a chance staying at a bed and breakfast, hoping that I made a good choice. Great choice, great location. Easy to get to, really friendly people that ran the bed and breakfast. Bayou also includes an impressive cathedral. On the right, you see a group photo, Riley, Jordan, Jake, and Jill with the cathedral in the background. On the left is what it looks like at day. That's what it looks like at night. It's hard to get a sense of how big the cathedral is until you get a side profile. That is what it looks like from the side. Now, mind you, Bayou is not really that big a city, so to have a cathedral of this size is pretty impressive. The other thing you may notice is it's a little bit different design than some of the other cathedrals we would see. Last note, it ended up we saw a lot of impressive cathedrals on this trip. Not by intention or design, it just kind of happened. The next day we spent visiting the D-Day beaches, which is definitely one of the highlights from the trip. It is one thing to read about history in a book. It's another thing to actually walk the ground and get a sense of what it might have been like. Several photos from our visits. Upper left-hand corner, Jake, Jordan, Jill, and Riley standing in front of one of the gun emplacements from the Normandy beaches. Upper right is Riley, Jake, and Jordan overlooking the bluffs. Lower right, this is a diagram of Omaha Beach. It actually is located up above the beach. So as you look at the diagram, you can see the actual terrain in front of you. And lower left is Riley sitting on one of the guns in the gun emplacement, kind of yucking it up at one of the sites. You got to keep it a little bit light because this area can be quite serious given the nature of the battle that took place there. We had the privilege of visiting the U.S. Cemetery in Normandy. It is a solemn place, a grim reminder of the sacrifice those have made in order to make sure that we are free, especially the citizens of Europe. On the left, you see a cross. There's several thousand in the cemetery. Each one represents one of the fallen U.S. soldiers. On the right is Riley with the cemetery in the background. And this is what the memorial looks like. It is a moving place. And as you can tell, it is well cared for. The French are very thankful for what the United States did to secure their freedom. And they go out of their way to make sure that this place is taken care of. It is a special place. I think all Americans should visit here at some point in your lifetime. No visit to Normandy is complete without visiting Pointe du Hoc, the place that Colonel Rudder and his Rangers scaled the cliff to silence the guns. On the left, you see Riley standing in front of the Ranger Memorial. It is a dagger, symbolizing the weapon of choice when Rangers are called to hand-to-hand combat. On the right, you see Riley and Jill standing in front of one of the gun emplacements. I visited Pointe du Hoc many years ago, and I have to say it's changed a lot since then. It's a lot better. There's a lot more explanations of what took place during the battle. For anyone visiting Normandy, make sure you don't skip this location. It has a special place in military history. What took place here is remarkable. I am a United States Army Ranger, and I consider Pointe du Hoc to be holy ground, as do all United States Army Rangers. On the left is a photo of me standing in front of the memorial. I'm wearing my 82nd Airborne t-shirt. Proud moment for me. On the right, you see Riley standing overlooking the sheer rock cliff face that the Rangers scaled to get to the gun emplacement. I have visited this place more than once, and I cannot fathom the courage and bravery, much less audacity, that it took for the Rangers to land in boats, look at this cliff face, and think, we can climb up here under enemy fire and do what needs to be done. For anybody that wonders what our military is capable of, you simply need to visit a place like Pointe du Hoc. When you see it, you will recognize that our military, our best and brightest, are capable of anything on the battlefield. They are unstoppable. Next up on the trip, Mont Saint-Michel, the bucket list item that we saved for visiting during Jill's birthday. On the left, you see a photo of Riley with Mont Saint-Michel in the background. Two things to notice. First, it does turn into an island during the day as the water or the tide goes in and out. And two, this place is huge. I am clueless about how in the world they built this place, having visited it. It definitely took a lot of time and a lot of effort to build Mont Saint-Michel. On the right is Jake and Riley standing on the main drag. I'd love to say it's a street, but it's not really. There's no cars allowed on the island. Quite honestly, the island's not big enough for cars to drive around. But this starts from the hotel and climbs up to the cathedral itself. One reminder about Mont Saint-Michel, it is packed with tourists during the day. We arrived late in the day, right before dinner. Good strategy. It empties out at night. A lot of folks are day trippers, and when they leave, you get the island to yourself. and it is a lot more fun walking around without stumbling and bumbling your way through hundreds, maybe if not thousands of tourists. A few photos from our hotel that we stayed in at Mont Saint-Michel, La Mer Poulard. Not cheap, but then again, no hotels on the island are cheap. A splurge, but well worth it. On the left, you see a picture of beautiful Jill with her head sticking out the window with the hotel in the background. On the right, Riley standing in front of the hotel, which is at the base of Mont Saint-Michel, of the main drag that goes up to the cathedral. If there's one word that characterizes Mont Saint-Michel, it is stairs. Lots and lots of stairs all going up. I call it the Stairway to Heaven. Now that I have visited Mont Saint-Michel, I think I understand what Led Zeppelin was talking about when they wrote the song. On the left, you see a group photo as we climbed our way up towards the cathedral. That photo gives you a better sense as far as what the stairs themselves look like. On the right is Jordan and Jill standing at what I would call the corner of Mont Saint-Michel. This is up high by the cathedral. In the background is the French countryside. Now think about it. All we've done is climb from our hotel up to the cathedral, which is not a long trip, and you can get a sense from that picture just how high up we are. We are almost in the clouds. Pretty impressive. Next morning, we jumped in the car and started to head south towards Brittany. We decided to stop in the town of Dinan on the way. I'd read about it. It sounded like a fun place to stop, so I thought I'd take a chance, somewhat unplanned. A few photos from our visit. Upper left is Riley standing in kind of the town square with several of the half-timbered houses behind him. Upper right is Riley peering over the city from the city wall. Lower right is Jill, Jordan, and Jake as we went around the city wall. And lower left is Jordan and Jill with the city in the background. Somewhat unplanned, but a pleasant surprise. Had a good time visiting. Two more photos from our stop in Dinan. On the left is Jill and Jordan with the watchtower of the town in the background. This is where they would go up and watch to make sure no one is surprising the town and going to attack us. Keep us safe by keeping watch on the watchtower. On the right is Riley standing next to a suit of armor. Dinan has been around for hundreds of years, so it has medieval history. The town actually does a nice job of highlighting this era from their history. Next stop was Rennes. In the last video I mentioned we would stay in a funky hotel called La Magic Hall. And man, it was funky, but funky and fun. On the left you see Jill and Riley eating breakfast, and on the right is Riley sitting on what is the largest couch, or longest couch I've ever seen in my entire life. A few reasons this place was funky. It had a recording studio, an odd vinyl collection, games to play, and just a really interesting vibe to it. Could not beat the price. Took a risk by staying there, and really pleased we did. Of all the places we stayed, it was actually one of our favorites. Here are a few photos from the city of Rennes, which is full of college students because there's a university there, so it has a young vibe to it. On the left, half-timbered houses, which are really popular in this part of France. And on the right is Jake standing on the end of a street that is known for its pubs. If you look in the background, every single building on this street had a pub in it. Jake thought it might be a good idea to visit. I agreed with him. For the record, we did not stay too late or do anything silly, because as you might imagine, it kind of turns into New Orleans late in the evening. Rennes also has a large market. We were actually recommended by some tourists to visit the market. It was Saturday, so we were able to. Really glad we did to get a sense of how the locals actually live. Recommendation, if you're traveling and you ever get a chance to visit a market, just like a farmer's market in America, it'll give you an opportunity to see how the people actually live in that area. A few photos. Upper left is kind of a standard stall you would see at the market. Upper right, that's cheese, fromagerie, really stinky, really tasty. Lower right is seafood, in this case, a case of lobsters, and lower left, flowers. The market was a nice surprise, really big. We'd heard it was one of the biggest ones in all of France. And as I said, a good opportunity to just mingle with the locals and act like you are one. Next stop was Chartres. Two pictures from our hotel. On the left, you see Jill and Jordan standing in front of the hotel we stayed in, La Parvée. And on the right, that is a view of the cathedral from our hotel. And yeah, it's right next to it. So 2 reasons we picked this hotel. One, as you might imagine, you could not beat the location. And two, it had a really high rating on booking.com. We learned later the reason why. The owner was really, really helpful, super nice, and we really enjoyed our stay at La Parve. Here's a few more photos from Chartres with us hanging out. As you might imagine, on the trip, we got to do a lot of hanging out. On the left is Riley, Jake, and Jordan with the cathedral in the background. And on the right is Jill and Jordan at lunch. Oh, and there's the cathedral in the background. The cathedral is humongous. It's a pilgrimage church. People come from miles away. So as you might imagine, if you're staying in Chartres, you're definitely going to spend some quality time in the cathedral, which I'm going to talk about next. Chartres Cathedral is really impressive. On the left is a photo of the entrance itself. A few more photos. Upper right, they're restoring all the statues inside, so you can see the contrast of the clean white statues on the left and the unclean dark black statues on the right. They also have several prayer areas, and this includes going down into the crypt. Now, I have visited many churches in Europe. I haven't really seen a crypt of a size like the one in Chartres. As you can see in the picture, they are actually able to hold services. That's how big the crypt was. Next stop, this was a little bit unplanned, but it was Reims. And the reason it was unplanned, we actually dropped the singers off at Charles de Gaulle Airport and then headed east to Reims to see the cathedral. So it was just the Keating boys at this point. On the left, you see Riley in his Guns N' Roses t-shirt, standing with the cathedral in the background. And on the right is a selfie with Riley and the cathedral in the background. This cathedral is famous because French kings received their coronation here. Not in Paris, but actually in Reims itself. You can't tell necessarily from the photos, but once again, this cathedral is humongous when compared to the town it's in. 2 more photos from Reims. Lower left is actually an ancient storage house. The Romans built this a few thousand years ago, still in use. Impressive place to walk through. And on the right is Riley with a bad teenager attitude and the main boulevard in Rennes in the background. And let's finish up talking about French food by talking about some funky French food. On this chart are 2 examples, one good, one not as good. On the left is the omelet I ate on Mont Saint-Michel. It is ginormous. It's about as big as your head. And as you can see, it's got kind of a foamy texture to it based on the way they cook it. It's got bacon shoved in there too. That was really delicious. On the right, I decided to take a chance on this sandwich. It is fish, onion, and tomato. Not too bad, pretty tasty, but kind of an oddball choice. When you're out traveling, take some chances, especially when it comes to food. You're not going to die, just eat it, and if it doesn't taste good, move on, try something else. And our last day, I decided we would visit a U.S. cemetery because there is a World War I, several of them actually in the area that we were in, because this is where the war was fought. In this case, on the right, you see Riley with the cemetery in the background, and on the left is what it looks like inside the memorial. The names of all the fallen etched in the walls. I thought we'd visit since we're in the area. I have to admit, it was out in the middle of nowhere and kind of hard to get to. In this case, it's the Battle of Belleau Woods, a famous Marines battle, but I thought it was worth a stop. So that concludes this video. We really had a great time. We saw a whole lot, experienced a lot of French culture. If I had to do it all over again, one main thing I would change, we probably tried to do a little bit too much. Based on the agenda, we bounced around a lot, and it probably was not as relaxing as it could have been. I'll take the blame on that. Next time we go, probably not as many stops. Take our time a little bit more, just get a chance to chill and experience French culture for all that it is. Last word of advice, go to France. Some Americans think the French hate us. That's not true. The French love Americans. It's a beautiful country full of wonderful sights, awesome food. Hopefully this video has reinforced that. So get out there and visit France. This concludes my 8th practice video. I appreciate you watching it. If you watched all the way till now, you are a super duper paratrooper. As always, I value your feedback. Feel free to scroll down below and leave a comment. Au revoir.